I use this almost as much as the soldering station. I use a soldering station and this and a multimeter absolutely more than anything. It's nice to have. I paid about $70 for it. This is an LCR meter. It's probably one of the cheapest ones that's actually a good meter. This is ET430. And you can use it to measure, see, capacitors. On capacitors, it's really good. It'll give you the ESR. Can't remember what the X is. It gives you different parameters for it. And you can actually change the frequency on it that you're checking your capacitor. There's 100 kilohertz, 100 hertz, 120 hertz. That's something you want to use a lot too, 120 hertz, because that's what the electricity, is at. You're going to want to test your capacitors usually at 120 hertz, unless the frequency of the circuit is that will make a big difference. Every circuit has its own frequency. Of course, without the spec, it's going to be hard, so you can just kind of run through the frequencies while you're checking it. It also does resistors, and it does inductors. The L stands for induction. I haven't used it to check induction yet, and really I don't use it to check resistors. I just use a multimeter for that. But for capacitors, this thing was really worth it. I think I paid probably about $80, $90 maybe. I don't know. That's kind of what it was. But anyway, that's a really handy item to have if you can afford it. This is a linear power supply. This one has a giant transformer built into it, and it's really heavy. You can pick them up and tell, just by the weight, you'll be able to tell if it's linear or regulated. This says it's a regulated power supply, but it's definitely linear because of that big old armor inside it. One thing you might want to do is get you a transformer you can turn up and down. That's called a variac transformer. You just plug it up and then you plug whatever you're working on right here. That way you can bring the voltage up and down, AC voltage up and down with a knob on top. It goes from 0 to, I think it's something like 130 volts. And it can actually run it up to 130 volts, so be careful with that. I also have a watt meter in line with it. It's a watt meter, amp meter. That will help you a lot to tell if something's pulling too much current. That's something you're going to need to know. And then this is my, I built it off of a plan off the internet. This is a safety thing that you do in case whatever you have has a big short in it. Whatever you're working on, you plug it into this, and if it's got, say, like if it's a 4 amp TV and the thing is pulling like 7 amps, this light is going to burn up the extra current that you're pulling and pull it off the TV you're fixing and save your TV from actually just burning all to pieces. This is another component tester. This is one of the better ones. You have to build it in a kit. You don't get the plexiglass case with it. You have to buy that extra. But that's a handy one. I went ahead and put some of these little connectors on it so it make it easier to use. This is one of the better ones. This is a component tester. It's called B-Side ES-R02 Pro. I think you can get this for less than $30 off of Amazon. It'll check, just like this one, it'll check capacitors, resistors, transistors, inductors. It checks everything. It's amazing what you can do with these things nowadays. This is an E-Tech or an X-Tech small one, MN15A multimeter. I use that a lot. It's reliable. And I've got a bigger one X-Tech X505 model. This is way heavier. It's supposed to take up to 600 volts. Cat 3 1000 volts. This is more of a safety issue. I just like it in case I need it. If I was working on something like a tube radio, I'd either want that one or I would want this Fluke. This is a Fluke 175. But I mean, when you're buying the nicer multimeters, what you're paying for is what you're usually paying for, or you should be paying for, is the safety, the way the fuses are, the way it's designed. I mean, if I was working on a tube radio, I say I pulled about 400 volts. You may not want to be using a smaller one. You want something a little more hefty with a real protection in it. That way, if you touch something wrong, it would destroy your meter probably and damage it, but it would save you. And that's the main thing. You know, you don't want to get hurt just because you got a hobby. This is a signal tracer. That's just a little hand built signal tracer kit, and I added the 9-volt clip to it and put the speaker in there in the case with the switch. It all runs off 9 volts. And say you're trying to find out why a transistor radio doesn't have audio. Well, you just take your leads. I've got the other leads. You put the black one to ground, usually the outside circuit ground, and you can just take your red lead and go down the signal, or look for the signal coming from the RF into the audio circuit. You can do a lot. This one doesn't do RF. If you were really into it and had plenty of money, you'd get one that's got the RF signal and the audio signal. This is just audio signal, but I've used this quite a bit on different radios that different have audio. If you remember, I worked on this radio and I had a problem with the multiplexer where it wasn't coming out one side on the output. This little signal tracer here is how I found that the signal was coming up to the multiplexer, but it wasn't coming out on that channel. It has two multiplexer ICs in it, so one side wasn't working. This is the end of part 2. Part 3 is coming up pretty soon. I appreciate you watching. Thanks.